I'm watching every single Criterion film, and the first film I'm covering is The Spirit of the Beehive, which is Victor Erice's The Spirit of the Beehive from 1973, and it's a spare, haunting portrait of childhood used as an allegory for post-Civil War Spain. Set in a small Castilian village in 1940, the film follows 6-year-old Anna, who becomes obsessed with a traveling screening of James Whale's Frankenstein, after her older sister tells her the monster is a spirit that might still be alive. Anna begins a private quest across the barren landscape and into an abandoned sheepfold, where she discovers and quietly tends a wounded fugitive. The story unfolds through Anna's point of view, blending cinematic fantasy and grim reality until the adult world's political violence intrudes. Victor Erice's The Spirit of the Beehive explores how childhood imagination, silence, and political trauma intersect. Using Anna's encounter with Frankenstein, the film maps innocence against a repressive post-Civil War Spain using imagery like the beehive, the well, the train, to make a quiet political allegory. The film centers on childhood and the power of imagination as a way to process and resist a bleak adult world. Anna's fascination with the Frankenstein sequence becomes a lens through which she interprets real people and events, blurring fantasy and reality and revealing how stories shape perception. Anna's inner life is the film's moral and emotional core as she attempts to summon the spirit, but the way it's shown isn't particularly supernatural, but more about the theory of knowledge and how Anna is trying to make sense of absence, death, and adult secrecy. Erice uses long, patient shots in children's drawings to show how imagination both shelters and exposes vulnerability. The adult's emotional withdrawal, the muted household, and the empty Castilian plain all register the lingering trauma of the Civil War and the suffocating atmosphere of Francoist Spain. The film's absence of much dialogue and withhold of information mimics how a society survives by not speaking. The traveling showing of Frankenstein is both a big, exciting event for the children and also a meta-commentary on film's capacity to create myths, to humanize the monster, and to offer hidden messages of protest under censorship. Erice deliberately stages the movie within the movie to show how images can reframe political realities. Shots of the beehive, the regimented landscape, and the mechanical rhythms portray a social organism that consumes difference, and Anna's curiosity is the disruptive element. The film's title invites you to read the village as a microcosm of a society that has learned to function by suppressing rebellion. Key recurring images like the well, the train, the beehive, and the Frankenstein scene operate as symbolic anchors. Erice's sparse dialogue, careful framing, and use of children's drawings to create a poetic style that asks you to assemble meaning from fragments of context and suggestions rather than be told outright. The Spirit of the Beehive is a strong film because of how it transforms political critique into intimate poetry. It shows how memory, art, and childhood perception can register trauma in ways that direct argument cannot, making the film both a historical document and a universal meditation on loss and wonder. The Spirit of the Beehive relies on understatement rather than theatricality when it comes to performances. Performances are measured, interior, and cinematic rather than demonstrative. This restraint lets small gestures and looks carry narrative weight and makes Anna's interior life the film's primary register. Anna Torrance's performance is the film's biggest highlight. At 6 years old, she portrays curiosity, fear, and moral tenderness almost entirely through expression and posture, with wide eyes, hesitant approaches, and the way she cares for the wounded man. Her performance might be one of the best child performances that I've seen because of how much she's able to anchor the film's allegory without ever feeling staged at just 6 years old. The parents function as emotional landscapes rather than conventional characters. The restraint is a performance choice that communicates post-war exhaustion and private grief. Fernanda Gomez's beekeeper is contemplative and distant, while Teresa Gimpera's mother is quietly burdened and says what she doesn't in her gestures. The minimalism creates the social silence that Anna tries to pierce. Isabel Telleria's Isabel provides the necessary contrast to Anna as she's mischievous, teasing, and worldly enough to shape Anna's fears. The supporting cast like teachers, villagers, and the fugitive are sketched with detail so that each encounter feels like a small moral test for Anna. This economy of performance keeps the film's fable-like tone intact. Together, the cast creates a tonal balance where Anna's vivid interiority against adults' muted despair turns a local story into a national allegory about memory and repression. The performances transform symbolic motifs into lived experience, allowing you to feel the political and emotional stakes without explicit rhetoric. Victor Erice's direction in The Spirit of the Beehive is defined by a patient, muted setting that turns small gestures and landscape into political and emotional meaning. Erice composes images that think slowly. He opens with children's drawings that foreshadow scenes and set a fairy tale tone, then lets the camera linger on faces, hands, and the Castilian plain so that silence and stillness become expressive devices. This visual restraint forces you to read micro gestures and sparse connections rather than rely on dialogue. Long takes and static compositions create a contemplative rhythm as scenes unfold in real time, allowing emotional beats to accumulate in the frame. Erice often frames characters against empty landscape or domestic architecture to emphasize isolation and social paralysis. The camera's distance from the actors turns ordinary actions into symbolic acts. Sound design alternates between natural sounds like the creak of the house, the hum of bees, the projector, and a near absence. Silence is not emptiness, but a texture as it encodes repression, unspoken grief, and the censorship that shaped everyday life under Francisco Franco. The film's sparse score and the abrupt cuts in the Frankenstein screening heighten the sense that images can both reveal and conceal. It restages the traveling cinema in the Frankenstein sequence as a formal pivot. Using the film within the film supplies Anna with a symbolic vocabulary with monster and spirit to interpret and make sense of reality. This move makes film itself a character, serving as an instrument of wonder, misreading, and hidden commentary under censorship. Rather than explicit denunciation, Erice relies on allegory and omission. The beehive, the train, the well, and the wounded fugitive are staged as fragments that, when assembled by watching, point to post-Civil War trauma and the mechanisms of authoritarian control. Erice's hidden context and suggestive imagery were a deliberate strategy to avoid censorship while still communicating a national memory. Erice's direction is also inseparable from his collaborators, with Luis Cuadrado's cinematography and Luis D. Pablo's score that helped realize the film's tonal subtlety, and Erice's choice to work with non-theatrical child acting foregrounds cinematic interiority over performance spectacle. The result is a debut that reads like a visual poem and a political allegory. Erice's direction makes The Spirit of the Beehive a film that thinks in images and with a hidden context, and asks you to assemble meaning from what is shown and, crucially, from what is withheld. I give The Spirit of the Beehive an A-, an 8 out of 10, a 4 stars. Yeah, I highly recommend checking out this film if you haven't, because this is a film that I think is very important and how to tell a story among censorship and authoritarian control. This film came out in 1973, and I believe the general, the person who had authoritarian control over Spain, he didn't die until 1973, because I saw that the control was from 1939 to 1975. So this film was made during while they were under authoritarian control. And the way that they use Frankenstein and the way that they use suggestion and hidden context to tell this story just adds so much more weight to this movie and to the story. Hope you all did enjoy this first video. Next video will be out tomorrow. And let me know your thoughts on The Spirit of the Beehive if you've seen it. If you haven't, are you going to be checking this film out? I was able to watch it free on YouTube, so if you just search it up on YouTube, you should be able to find it. Let me know your thoughts down below, and don't forget to like and follow.